Welcome to this explainer. Now, most of us, we kind of get how the standard justice system works for everyday citizens, right? But what happens when the law has to adapt? I mean, what happens when the person standing before the judge is completely unique? Like, say, someone holding the absolute highest power in the land. Why do rulers face constitutional law in the first place? And on the flip side, what happens when the person in court is just a child? Well, let's find out.
It's a pretty provocative question, isn't it? Can a king actually be taken to court? For centuries, monarchs enjoyed this absolute power. It was basically the idea that the ruler is the law. But modern constitutional frameworks? They flip that completely on its head. They establish that true justice absolutely requires everyone to be accountable. And honestly, that sets up our central narrative for today.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. First, equality before the law. Second, the special court for rulers. Third, the court for children. Fourth, the court-martial. And finally, the anatomy of special courts.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, Equality before the law. No one is above the Constitution.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Historically, rulers enjoyed this impenetrable shield, absolute immunity from all legal proceedings. I mean, they were untouchable. But why do modern rulers now face constitutional law? Well, it's simple, really. For a constitution to truly be supreme, literally no one can sit above it. Under Article 182 of the Federal Constitution, the Yang-Deportuanagong and the Malay rulers are now fully subject to the rule of law in their personal capacities. It's a massive, game-changing shift from absolute immunity to absolute accountability.
Moving right along to Section 2, Special Court for Rulers, Suing a Sovereign.
So you might be wondering, how do you actually enforce this kind of accountability? Obviously, you can't just send a monarch down to the local traffic court, right? So our first pillar for understanding this is the establishing law, Article 182. This created a court with exclusive jurisdiction to hear civil and criminal proceedings involving the king or Malay rulers, specifically in their personal capacity. And get this, no other court in Malaysia has this authority. It's totally unique.
That brings us to our second pillar, composition. As you can imagine, judging a sovereign carries incredible weight. It requires a uniquely high-powered 5-member panel. It's chaired by the Chief Justice of the Federal Court, and they're joined by the Chief Judges of the High Courts of Malaya and Sabah and Sarawak. The final 2 members, they're current or former federal or high court judges, and they are handpicked by the Conference of Rulers. So, it's a very heavy-hitting lineup.
Now for our next pillar, special procedures. There's a really vital legal filter here. You can't just, wake up on a random Tuesday and decide to sue a ruler. Permission from the Attorney General absolutely must be obtained before any civil action can even commence. And this safeguard is crucial because it ensures only genuine cases proceed, which protects the monarchy from frivolous harassment or time-wasting lawsuits.
And this brilliantly illustrates why this court was so absolutely necessary. Consider the historic case of Farida Begum. A suit was filed by a foreigner against the Sultan of Pahang, and it was outright dismissed. Why? Well, because the ruler enjoyed absolute immunity at that time. This specific case is literally the textbook proof of why removing that immunity was so monumental for establishing true equality before the law.
All right, pivoting to Section 3, the Court for Children. Protection and rehabilitation.
Let's completely shift gears here, going from the most powerful figures in society to the most vulnerable. Hitting our first pillar, the establishing law here is the Child Act 2001, which defines a child as anyone under 18. But here is a fascinating legal absolute. Under Section 82 of the Penal Code, a child below 10 years old bears absolutely zero criminal responsibility. None. And for the older kids, the court's priority completely shifts away from punishment. It focuses entirely on welfare and rehabilitation. This heavy rehabilitative focus totally dictates the court's composition. So instead of constitutional judges, you have 2 magistrates presiding, and they are assisted by 2 advisors who are actually appointed from local residents. Crucially, though, at least one of these advisors must be a woman. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a deliberate structural choice to ensure a child's welfare is always at the absolute forefront of the decision-making.
Our third pillar is jurisdiction. While this court does apply the Criminal Procedure Code to hear criminal offenses committed by children, there are 2 really hard limits. First off, they cannot try anyone who has already turned 18. And second, they absolutely cannot hear offenses punishable by death. That is strictly off the table. Now, looking at their special powers under Section 14, you are not going to find any severe prison sentences here. Instead, the court issues rehabilitation orders.
For instance, children around 10 years old might be sent to probation hostels, while those 14 and above might attend Henry Gurney schools. Honestly, in a lot of cases, they are simply placed under the strict supervision of a social welfare officer, just to help them safely reintegrate into society.
Moving on to Section 4, the court-martial, military discipline.
So, stepping into the highly disciplined environment of the armed forces, our establishing law is the Armed Forces Act 1972. The court-martial exists for one primary reason, and that is to maintain rigid discipline and order within the regular forces, so the Army, Navy, and Air Force. It's there to ensure military personnel comply strictly with military regulations.
Now, what's really interesting about this setup is its highly structured, rank-based composition. The officers sitting in judgment must be from the exact same branch as the accused, but the hierarchy dictates everything. If the panel has 5 or more officers, a lieutenant colonel has to preside. Fewer than 5, then a major takes charge. It is a court entirely defined and driven by military rank.
And naturally, the jurisdiction perfectly matches that intense military environment. They hear unique offenses that a regular civilian court would basically never see, things like aiding the enemy, communicating with the enemy, or misconduct during operations. These kinds of offenses are absolutely essential to handle internally to maintain the operational efficiency and security of the nation's defense forces.
When we look at their special powers, the contrast with the children's court we just talked about is honestly staggering. The court-martial handles severe, discipline-focused penalties. Convictions here can result in the death penalty, up to 14 years of imprisonment, outright dismissal from service, or the forfeiture of rank. I mean, it really is the ultimate system of strict accountability.
And finally, Section 5, Anatomy of Special Courts, the 5 pillars.
So, the crucial point is this. Throughout this explainer, we've used a 5-step blueprint. If you ever need to decode any special court, whether it's for a king or a soldier, use these exact 5 pillars. Number 1, introduction. What law established it? Number 2, composition. Who actually sits in judgment? Number 3, jurisdiction. What specific cases can they hear? Number 4, special powers. What punishments or orders can they issue? And number 5, conclusion. Why is this court vital to society?
Which leaves us with this really profound final thought. Today, we've seen how the law bends and adapts to ensure fairness, from stripping away royal immunity to protecting our youth and maintaining national defense. If a legal system is ultimately measured by how it treats both its highest monarchs and its most vulnerable children, what do these special courts reveal to you about the true values of society? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how the law shapes our world.